and thanks for joining us. We're here in Wheeling as part of our tour around the state talking about the reforms that we're advocating for the people of Illinois. We need to grow our economy. That's the key to our long-term balanced budgets. That's key to rising family incomes. That's the key to more high-quality jobs. And that's the key to providing the resources to fund our schools properly. Our reforms do all of those things. We're advocating them very strongly. We're here visiting a wonderful company that would like to expand in Illinois, but finds taxes are difficult, the regulations are difficult. We need to become more pro-business, pro-investment, and pro-growth so we can expand our economy, properly fund our schools, pay for our pensions, and for our health care. Simple fact is, if Illinois was not one of the worst growing states, slowest growing states, but was merely an average growing state, we just grew at the national average for years, we wouldn't have unpaid bills today, we wouldn't have a deficit today, and we wouldn't have had to do the tax hike in 2011. We need economic growth to increase opportunity for everyone and to balance our budgets for the long term. That's what we're about. Down in Springfield, the Speaker and the majority in the legislature is saying, look, Governor, we either need to raise taxes or cut services, cut programs. And I say, Mr. Speaker, that's really not true. We don't need to have that be the trade-off, higher taxes over fewer services. How about faster economic growth and more efficient government with less bureaucracy? That will free up the resources to balance the budget and get true better opportunity for the families. That's the conversation we need to be having in Springfield, and that's what we're here today to talk about. Charles?
Governor, now that you've had a few days to think about it, what do you want the President to say to the General Assembly on Wednesday when he speaks to you?
Well, that's a great question. I look forward very much to the President's arrival and addressing all of us in the state government in Springfield. I hope he talks about how important it is, how valuable it is to have bipartisan compromise to get things done. The President has been facing headwinds in a Congress that's from the different political party, and both of those sides have been at loggerheads and really blocking each other for years. And obviously, we here in Springfield, I from the Republican Party, the legislature, supermajority controlled by Democrats, we've been at loggerheads on most everything for a year. Doesn't really serve the people well, and there's really no good excuse for us not to have a budget. I hope the President advocates for bipartisan compromise. I also hope that he speaks out, as he has in the past, in favor of government reform through term limits and redistricting reform. President Obama has been a strong advocate. He has said that the way that our maps are drawn now for general elections is not right, it's not fair. It allows the politicians to pick their voters rather than the voters pick their politicians. The President said it, I agree with him, and the voters of Illinois agree with him. He has also said, on his tour in Africa, he most specifically said it, he said, governments that are suffering with corruption and conflicts of interest and self-dealing are benefited when term limits are in place. It limits that sort of behavior. He said it in Africa. I hope he says it in Springfield, because we need term limits. The people of Illinois overwhelmingly support it. And when some folks argue, well, Governor, when you and the President talk about term limits and redistricting reform, that's nice, but it has nothing to do with the budget, so we shouldn't talk about that right now. My response is, that's not true at all. And in fact, the University of Illinois at Chicago, UIC, has done a study that says we pay over $500 million of higher taxes in a corruption tax because of conflicts of interest. Term limits and redistricting could fix that. $500 million budget benefit from that. The University of Indiana has done a study several years ago that says Illinois taxpayers pay over $2 billion a year in higher taxes because of corruptions and conflicts of interest. Term limits and redistricting can help our budget get balanced if we'll implement those.
Just a follow-up. Do you sympathize with what Barack Obama has experienced now that you've had a year of?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's very difficult when you've got folks from different parties who strongly disagree on some policy, and neither side's willing to compromise. The President has dealt with that in Congress, and I'm dealing with that in our legislature.
Governor, when it comes to your this new private corporation, how do you respond to some criticism from Democratic members who are inferring that you don't have the power to create this agency and connect it so deeply with DCEO?
I think that's more obstructionist talk. The reality is, this is a privately funded, privately controlled corporation. Anybody can set up a C3 not-for-profit corporation, and that's what's happening here. And I can encourage, just as the state contracts or works with not-for-profit agencies all over. We do that in our Human Services Department. We do that in our education work. We do that on a regular basis. There's no reason we can't do that with this particular group. There's no restriction on that whatsoever.
How would you respond to criticisms about this being more playing favorites? You criticize things like edge credits in the past.
Well, see, what's great about the structure we've got in place on this new corporation is they can negotiate, they can pay their people whatever they want, they're not restricted by the state. We can recruit superstar people and pay them what they deserve to be paid because our work rules inside government don't allow that, so we can bring in the right people. We can have them disclose what their arrangements are publicly, and we can make sure that whatever recruiting efforts they do, whatever sales pitches they make, or whatever offers they propose to businesses from around the world to come to Illinois, that in the end, that all has to be approved by the Department of Commerce. So there are checks and balances. The taxpayers will not be on the hook for any deal unless the Department of Commerce and our administration has approved it. That's the way it works right now, and that will continue the way it works in the future.
But what about the confusion on the FOIA rules? You had
Yes.
said they would be, your DCO director said it wouldn't be.
Yes, and I apologize for that. We're sort of both right, and here's the subtlety of it. The reality is the entity itself will not be subject to FOIA on a complete basis. They won't be. Just like the other not-for-profit agencies that contract with the state, they're not subject to FOIA either. However, everything we do with that agency, everything, or that corporation, it's not an agency, that corporation, everything the state does, every relationship, every deal, every negotiation, every contract will be subject to FOIA. So the vast bulk of everything they do will be subject to FOIA. So it's sort of both sides are right.
Why the constant comparison to Texas? You know, I was counting at least 5 times.
Because they basically have the fastest growing economy in America. They create a lot of jobs, good quality jobs, and a lot of people here in Illinois, in the legislature, in the majority party, criticize Texas. They say it's a right-to-work state, they're hostile to workers, they're hostile to employees, they're bad. Well, Texas is booming. We can't pay our people well if we're not growing. And what I point out to everybody every day is Texas factory workers make more than Illinois factory workers, not even adjusting for the cost of living. And when you adjust for the cost of living, Texas has a much lower cost of living than we do. When you adjust, Texas factory workers are doing terrifically well compared to Illinois. We need a strong pro-business, pro-growth economy first and foremost, and Texas is a great example. And as I said in my State of the State address, if we could blend the economic muscle and vitality of Texas with the heart and social services and support of a state like Massachusetts, which is a Democratic-controlled, strong social services safety net state, but Massachusetts has done the reforms, many of them, that we're advocating. They've taken things out of collective bargaining to reduce the government costs. They've taken health care benefits out of collective bargaining to save costs. They've done workers' comp reform, so now Massachusetts has average workers' comp costs. We have some of the highest. Massachusetts is average. And I've said, let's be average in Illinois too. If we could have average workers' comp costs and average property tax costs like Massachusetts, we can grow and then we can compete because we've got a better location and we've got better people here. We can beat Texas and we can blend the best of Massachusetts and the best of Texas right here.
Last question, Charles.
What about the beer that you proposed to have with the president? Has he gotten back to you?
They've not given a definitive answer. They've said that the president's schedule is difficult. They'll do their best. Thanks very much, everybody.